Let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. And just take these moments to breathe mindfully. Allow yourself to settle in place, to feel the power of your own presence. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart. And take a moment just to send loving intentions out to all the beings in the world who are currently suffering in states of sorrow and existing within perceptions of brokenness. May they come to know their completeness. May they come to know unity, and may they come to know peace. And we'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jyestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Visita Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Kritachi Shagmam Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. Good morning, and thank you all so much for being here. So today, we talk a little bit about the goddess Akhilandeshwari. She's such a wonderful goddess. Truly she is. Not very well known. She's perhaps one of the more elusive forms. And there's really not very much written about her, only a few commentaries. You can find some discussion of her deep in the scriptures, but it's difficult to find. Just as the Mother Durga is difficult to reach. That was what her name translates as. And Mother Akhilandeshwari is an avatar of the Mother Durga. So it makes sense that she would be a bit difficult to reach, to discover. But she's very important to us. Her name illustrates for us everything that we need to know about her. Her name is translated in at least two different ways. Akhilandeshwari. Akhilanda means that which is never not broken. That which is never not broken. Now, it's a double negative, yeah. We'd like to believe that we're that which is never broken. But the reality is that we are exactly as she is. Therefore, we are never not broken. And we'll explain a little bit more of what that actually means in a moment. The second often translated meaning of her name is Akhila Anda Ishwari. Akhila means universe. It's one of its translations. And Anda is the cosmic egg. The cosmic egg is the container of all that is. And Ishwari is the goddess. And so she's that aspect of divinity that holds the universe in her womb. Not only holds it in her womb, but also brings it forth from her womb. She is the beginning, the middle, and the end of all things. And she carries us with her and brings us forth from her in protection, as a protection. And what is it that she's protecting? We talked about it a little bit for the retreat attendees over this weekend. She's protecting our capacity to eventually come to know the truth of ourself, to eventually have the self-realization that's promised to us as part of this existence. It's not promised to us in this life necessarily. And fortunately, there's reincarnation. It could be that we come into a full self-realization 10 lives from now, or 10,000 lives from now. But the promise is there, that at some point, at some moment in time, there will be an epiphany of who and what it is that we truly are. And she protects that promise to us. Her two names are not opposed to one another. She's the protector, and she's also the one that establishes for us the sacredness of our brokenness. Are we really broken? Are we irreparably broken? These really are more human concepts. The idea that in my life I've experienced trauma and therefore parts of me are incomplete or broken. These are very much human psychological concepts. However, when we're looking at the Mother Akhilandeshwari and we're talking about that which is never not broken, one of the things that we can actually be saying would be that which is far more diverse than my human mind has the capacity to embrace in this particular moment. And why? Because I'm so focused on one or two things. I'm focused on some concept of perfection, some concept of being final and finished. Or I'm focused on the material things, the car, the house, the family, the job, the money, the addiction, the shopping, the alcohol. I'm too focused on those things. And when I have tunnel vision into those things, then what completely escapes me is the truth of the diversity that exists. And if you would like to see just a small example of diversity, all you have to do is witness nature. Nature is also the mother. Mother Nature. Yeah. So nature is also the divine mother. The goddess of the forest, the goddess of the animals, the goddess of the trees, the goddess of that, which is always changing, and sometimes quite drastically. Did you all see that there were 5 storms at once moving through the Atlantic Ocean? Yeah, 5 storms, each one having the potential of becoming a hurricane. But 5 very powerful storms. Did the ocean complain? No, not at all. Did the fish complain? Did the birds complain? Did the storm complain? It just was. So there's a storm, 5. There's an ocean, which has some amount of turbulence from the storm and some amount of peace underlying that turbulence. And above the storm, above the clouds, there's a blue sky and there's a sun and a moon and a star and all the planets. And all these things coexist. And one will never say to the other, "You're in my space. You're ruining my vision of my own finality. My own, I'm completely done and good. So please exit stage left." Nothing in nature will ever say that to something else. Nature and all of her splendor and wonder and diversity will only ever coexist with herself. And this is what the goddess Akhilandeshwari represents for us. Our ability to coexist with ourselves and with each other in whatever state we show up in. And that in any given moment that we feel that we are not complete, it's because we're not looking at the picture, complete picture. We're hyper-focused on one particular thing that is loaded with preferences and attachments. It has to be a certain way. It has to look a certain way. I have to have a certain thing, otherwise I can't be complete. And she says, you're so focused on that one thing that you're missing all that you have, which is everything. So we can look at that and we can begin to move into the idea and the discussion that to walk through this life in absolute complete health, with absolutely everything we want, with every possible satisfaction and no disappointment whatsoever, is a dull and boring existence, and not one person in this room would want to stay there very long. That in fact, your greatest sense of self comes from the struggles you overcome. Your greatest sense of your own priority comes from the difficulties that you encounter in life. It doesn't come from the easy times. Nope. The easy times you may ask for them to be continuous. Be like, well, I just need to have another vacation. I just need to have another moment of absolute peace. I need a moment where nothing is going wrong. And what you're saying is, I want to be bored for a moment. I want to be bored. I want to be in this human body, separated from the natural chaos of nature. And that's never going to happen. Because nature's not just outside that window. Nature's right here in this room, and it's right here inside of each and every one of us. We're one with nature. Her chaos is our chaos. And what is it that makes nature so beautiful to you? Why do you, when you see a sunrise, gasp? When you go out to visit the mountains, you're so taken in by the gloriousness of it all. You're awed by her. And yet she exists within us. And we say, no, I don't want the discomfort. I don't want the suffering. I don't want the pain. I don't want the sorrow. I just want the good stuff. Why is it? Why can't we look at our own life's ups and downs the same way that we look at the mountain range? The same way that we stare out at the ocean or at the sunrise or the sunset with a sense of awe and wonder and a sense of acceptance. We will never know our completeness and our wholeness until we accept it. Our completeness. And our completeness includes our perceptions of our brokenness. Brokenness has a lot of purpose to it. This idea that I've somehow lost a piece of myself. If you don't lose something, you can never rediscover it, right? And our entire life is nothing but a rediscovery. From the moment that you're born into a body, your entire life, the dharma of your life, is to find the pieces that you think you've lost. If it weren't for that sense of brokenness in some esoteric way, you would have no reason to be here. If you already know yourself and you already know everything about the truth of yourself, and there's no part of you that remains, unperfected, finalized, what is the work of your life? What is the work of your life then? Why would you have become embodied again? If not to reconcile your karmas and to rediscover the parts of yourself that you have forgotten over time and through lifetimes. Does that make sense? Some sense? Yeah. It's a powerful teaching. She's a powerful goddess. She's part of what's called the Tri-Shakti. Different from the Trideva, but they are three aspects of the Mother Durga, the Mother Parvati also. And so she's considered in that regard an extremely, exquisitely powerful goddess because of the truth that she carries, the nature of the pieces. And there's one picture of her which is just simply stunning. So many pictures of the goddess. She's so beautiful and well put together, She's got the gold crown and the gems, and her hair is always perfect. And she's got these beautiful eyes, and the sari is exactly as it should be, And there's this one picture of a Kilandeshwari where she looks like a jigsaw puzzle. She's just all in pieces, and she says, the goddess who is never not broken. Because yes, there is an aspect of yourself that is exactly the representation that we see of the Mother Durga or the Saraswati or Lakshmi Ma, which is absolutely what you would call perfect. And then there is our self, which is exactly Akhilandeshwari, which is also actually absolutely perfect. And the two are actually not separated from one another. It's our perception that separates them. It's our perception that says, I like the one who is perfect in my view, completely put together, crown and all. And the one that is in pieces looks a little frightening to me. So I prefer that one. And so we seek that out for ourselves. But we will only ever know that once we know the other and embrace her. Because it's through her that we come to the utmost beauty. And the utmost beauty isn't physical. It's not the perfect sari or the crown on the head. The utmost beauty is knowledge of the self and unity with divinity and all that divinity encompasses. There's no part of yourself that isn't sacred. There's no part of your life path that isn't divine. Whether you are in an optimal state of health or you're lying in a hospital bed. There's no part of either of those experiences that is more meaningful than another. They're all meaningful. They're all part of your karmic journey. And they all have something to offer you with regard to reconciliation of your karmas, particularly your past karmas. So right now you're creating karma. Even in this moment, you're creating karma. And the karma that's being created now will play itself out in the future. A lot of and everything of what you're experiencing now is also the continuation of what was begun in the past, of this life or some previous life. And so you come back into a body so that you can work on the things that you set in motion previously, like self-doubt, like greed, like the tendency to be lazy, or the tendency to be overactive, the tendency to be self-deprecating, or the tendency to be conceited. We come back so that we can work on these things. And if you find yourself in a prime physical condition, practice humility, especially in the face of those who are suffering. And if you find yourself laying out in a hospital bed, then practice courage and bravery. And don't be self-deprecating. Practice compassion for yourself. And if you come across another human being who is in prime physical condition, then have appreciation for their happiness. Have appreciation for their health. Just because they're healthy doesn't mean they're not suffering. Suffering is very much a psychological thing. So have compassion for their suffering. And avoid jealousy. Avoid envy. Instead, celebrate their happiness. And if you come across an individual laid out in a hospital bed, then sit with them and have compassion for their suffering. And know that you share that suffering. You know you do. Because we all suffer together. Not one of us is separate from the other in that regard. So no matter what condition you find yourself in, don't see it as isolated from all others. I'm broken and no one understands me. I'm completely fine and nobody gets it. Move away from those types of thoughts about yourself. And instead, see that your own condition is a reflection of the condition of everything. And that condition is always changing as nature is always changing. Because your physical body is nothing but nature. Guided by the three gunas, the tamas, the rajas, and the sattva. The tamas is lethargy, that which is not involved in movement or change or, well, not involved in change is not accurate, but that which is not moving and passionate, that which is kind of dull and sleepy. And then the rajas, which is the opposite of that, it's that which is always moving and passionate. And then the sattva, that which is in the middle, that which is appropriate. It's oftentimes referred to as purity or balance, but it's maybe a little easier to understand when we say that which is appropriate. When we think of balance, we think of 50-50, like a seesaw, right? It's like balance. But life isn't like that, is it? It's not always 50-50. It's appropriate. If your partner is stricken with the flu, then the balance within your relationship is that you have to take on more of the bulk of it while they're recuperating. So it's not a 50-50. It's whatever is appropriate. Appropriate, correct, and rightly attended to. And rightly attended to is an attitude of the mind and a condition of the heart. And so Akhilandeshwari says, don't shun any part of yourself. Collect up all those pieces and love them. Bring them close to your heart. Put them into your heart and let your heart be a sanctuary for every part of yourself that you think is lost, misplaced, shattered, whole, whatever it is. It's the most powerful teaching. And it's the one that each and every seeker is seeking. Because each and every seeker is seeking only one thing, and that is their own sense of completeness. But most times teachers in all traditions will say, embrace only this part of yourself. But then that leaves the other parts behind. So instead, embrace all parts of yourself. And when you see a part of yourself that needs change, then work on that. When you see a behavior of yours, one of your tendencies that is either violent or unfortunate in some other way, then work on that. Work on the doubt, work on the self-deprecation, work on the conceit, work on the greed, work on the jealousy, work on the envy, work on whatever it is that the unhealthy ego brings forward. Don't push it away or shove it under the rug, because that's not doing anything. It's not getting rid of it. It's only frustrating the process of your own awakening. Instead, embrace it. Hello, old friend. How are you today? We can fix all of this together. We can work this all out together. But if I stick you under the rug, then I can't fix anything, adjust anything, heal anything. Because that little anger is still going to be under the rug waiting to be let out. Yeah. It's like you see a spider running through your room, and you see that it ran under the rug, and so you're like, oh, well, it's underneath of there, I don't have to pay attention. But somewhere in your mind, you know it's there. You know it, and you don't stop thinking about it. Yeah. But you just like, I'll just leave it there. It'll go away. And every time you walk by there, you're like, oh. At some point, that little itsy bitsy teeny weeny spider with teeth that are so small is going to jump out and consume me. Does that make sense? Don't stick your anger under the rug or any of the other parts of yourself. Gather them all up. I like to use examples from my own life in these satsangs because what else can I talk to? The scriptures and life experience. You all know, most of you know that, earlier last year I had that accident and the top of my tibia got crushed. When I went to the doctor, the first thing that he said was, I think it's going to have to be replaced. I said, what do you mean replaced? And he said, well, the joint, a replaced knee. And I was like, I guess if it has to be. But then some intervention from Akhilandeshwari probably said, no, that's not what's going to happen. And I got sent off to an alternate doctor. And when I went in, he looked at it and he started pointing things out to me on the x-rays. The lateral aspect of the top of the tibia is what was crushed. And all the fragments of that part of the bone had fallen down into the interstitial fluids that are along the shaft of the tibia. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a plate and we're going to take all those pieces and we're going to lift them all up and bring them in with the plate. create a new ridge to the top of your bone. We'll screw it in, make sure it stays, and we'll let all of that heal together. I mean, I have goosebumps. Not because of the surgery, but because of the symbology of gathering up all those pieces and reintegrating them into the whole. That's what Akhilandeshwari invites us to do. She says it's only with all your broken pieces that you'll ever know a more complete truth of yourself. So stop running away. Stop running away from the pain. Stop running away from the sorrow. Stop running away from the disappointment. Stop running away. And stop running toward the impressions. Stop running toward the preferences. Stop running toward the ideal. And just be with what is. Because there's nothing more powerful than presence. Presence isn't preferential, though. It doesn't have a preference. It doesn't say, okay, I'm present. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to concentrate in that presence. And everybody be quiet now. I don't even want to hear a breath. Reality isn't like that. Someone's going to sneeze. Someone's going to cough. A baby's going to cry. Thunder's going to go. A tree's going to fall down. Someone's going to drop a pan in the kitchen. You know? It's not like that. Being present is about being with what is in all of its crazy chaos. It's not about shutting it out and having some kind of a false perfection. So stop asking yourself to be a false perfection. Embrace your parts and your imperfections and your brokenness, and embrace them with love. How many of you at some point in your life have wanted to be a radical change maker in the world? Yeah. Do you know the most powerful way of being a radical change maker in the world is by radically accepting yourself exactly as you are? And in that way, you inspire other people to be just as courageous and brave. And when more hearts are courageous and brave in the acceptance, then we will see real change in this world. Rather than little groups here and there chasing after an ideal dream, an ideal vision, or a fantasy. Because just as nature will always be in the glory of her chaos, so will the human-made world. The human-made world will never have perfection to it in the way that we're seeking. So take joy in the work to be done. Take joy in the service to be offered. Take joy in the relationships to be had. Take joy in the communities that gather together for the sake of love and unity. Take joy in knowing that there are people out in the world who are working on these things. And do what you can to support that. Recognize, don't back away from the brokenness of the human-made world. Recognize that it's inherent. It's never going to be different. It'll be different, but it's never going to be different. It's just going to be a different kind of broken, you know? We'll adjust one thing to some degree, and then something else will fall out of it. You know? It's always the way it is, isn't it? I had a teacher, and they explained the idea, the concept of I guess, wholeness, this kind of wholeness that we chase after with chocolate. He said, how many of you like chocolate? How many of you like chocolate? Oh, 2 hands up. Now, imagine. Chocolate's perfect, isn't it? Like, you get the right kind of chocolate, whatever kind of chocolate it is that you like, and I don't know, is there a bad chocolate? I don't think so. Well, maybe rice milk chocolate is not so great, but whatever. Whatever kind of chocolate floats your boat. It's perfect, isn't it? It lacks nothing. And when you have it, it's just so wonderful. It's just like the most glorious heaven there ever was. Now just imagine, there's nothing but chocolate. Chocolate for breakfast, chocolate for a snack, chocolate for lunch, that very beautiful, wonderful chocolate for afternoon snack, that very wonderful chocolate for dinner, that very wonderful chocolate for your midnight snack. Just that. How long does it remain wonderful?
Until lunch.
You'd probably get through breakfast, maybe breakfast and snack. But eventually you'd long for the diversity. Why? Why can't you just be happy that everything is the perfect chocolate? Why can't you just be happy with that? I mean, isn't that what you want? Don't you just want everything to be the same? You just want everything to be perfect? Want everything to be complete and whole and wonderful and absolutely exactly as you want it to be? Well, you got it. Why don't you want it now? Because that is not your nature. That is not the nature of nature. The diversity is. The diversity is. Why do you think we go out to the chocolate places and we get the chocolate with the cayenne pepper, and we get the chocolate with the blueberries, and the chocolate with the strawberries, and the chocolate with the coffee, and the chocolate with the mocha, and the 5,000 different types of chocolate? And then my son messages me and goes, "Mom, they have chocolate bacon." And I'm like, "Don't buy me any, because I'm not going to eat it, but I'm happy for you," because he loves that. Because the diversity is nature to us. That's natural to us. So if the diversity is natural to us, why are you so anti your own brokenness? Why are you so anti? So against that? So wanting to toss it under the rug, push it away, get rid of it, make it different? Your brokenness is part of the diversity. It just is. It's not saying, so I just want to be very clear, we're not spiritually bypassing anything here. We're not saying, well, if brokenness is so natural to our condition, then let's just lie down and be doormats. Let anybody do whatever they want. No. Nope. We're not passive in our brokenness. We're active in our brokenness. Our brokenness compels us to inquire, to ask the questions. What role do I play in this? What role do I play? What do I offer to this? How do I bring this back in and integrate it into a deeper sense of healing? Not curing, but healing. How do I bring this in? And even the deepest traumas can be gathered up into the most wonderful of integrations. Because it's those traumas, whether they're the deep, deep traumas or the lesser traumas, the day-to-day traumas, they're each and every one of them an opportunity to adjust one's own perceptions. And to see that even in my moments where the PTSD shows up, the nightmare shows up, the fear shows up, that beyond those things, and including those things, at the heart of myself, I am still me. I'm still me. And I'm still in the discovery phase of the essential self, which has no preference between the sense of brokenness, the sense of perfection. There's no preference. Because the essential self recognizes that these are all phases we go through. None of them are permanent. Just like that divine chocolate is not the only meal you're ever going to eat. Thank Goddess, right? Is that all making some sense?
Yeah.
Do you find it purposeful? Yeah? Are there any questions or reflections right now? Anything anybody would like to contribute? Yes.
So recently I've agreed to a partnership, and there's a lot of stuff now, like we're over the honeymoon stage, and there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of gunk that we both have that's arising, and it's just coming down, like for myself, just realizing that I'm not as efficient as I was with my problems, and my partner is he's aware, and even though it's not the way that I kind of expect to be handled, like I expect to be handled, like I'm a daddy's girl, and like that's kind of too, like from the man's, like that's what I expect, but in reality it's like, you know, if we are choosing each other, we need to realize like the situations that we have are not against each other, but they're together. Like together to tackle the situation. And it's just my stubbornness that I realized, and me wanting to sweep everything under the rug and not realize that I'm broken. So when you were talking about your injury and the symbolism that it brought, it's like, yeah, it's, you know, you both come together and you choose each other, and it's not you guys against each other, but it's you guys against whatever situation that arises for whatever happened before you two.
Exactly.
It's choosing to create that foundation and work up and stronger after each problem.
Nothing will bring our brokenness out more than a relationship, for sure, you know. And initially there is this really wonderful honeymoon phase, and the honeymoon phase is very special and it's wonderful, and you know, it is just so full of discovery and pleasantries and the building of perceptions. The honeymoon phase is also troublesome. It's got issues. Because when you first meet somebody, you put on your best outfit.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you put on the one that doesn't look like it's a jigsaw puzzle. You put on your best face, your best mind, your best heart, your best dress. You put it all on. And you're like, this is what you're getting if you get me. That's not all they're getting. No, that's not all they're getting. You know, so the honeymoon phase is also troublesome. It's got its issues. If we navigate the honeymoon phase effectively, and with a bit more forthright honesty, then what we do is we build a true partnership. But because we end up with this ideal, you know, we look at our partner and we're like, well, you always used to be on time. You always used to remember my birthday. You always used to hold the door open for me. You always used to listen to me when I was having an issue. You know, you always used to. And then all of a sudden, because it appears that they used to, but they don't anymore, now they're the problem. And so you look at them and you say, you're the problem. If only you would do what you used to do. But what they used to do might not have been a real reflection of who they are as a person, because they were trying to impress you, just like you were trying to impress them. And then they become disshuffled with you, and they say, well, you used to do this, and you used to do that, and you seemed really independent, and you used to be, you know, so strong about dealing with your own problems, and now all of a sudden you're like, you want me to do what? You know, so now you're looking at each other. Just like you said, that is something that when I work with couples all the time, I say to them, stand up and face each other. And they do. And they stand up and they face each other. And I say, this is the issue with relationship, is that you look at each other and think you are the problem. He's the problem. She's the problem. She's the problem. That one's the problem. Now, turn and face forward together. There's partner one, partner two, and that right over there is the issue. You stand side by side, arm in arm, love with love, strength with strength, and you face the problem together. And you forget about the honeymoon phase because it wasn't realistic. If it was, then 60% of all relationships wouldn't end in divorce, right? Instead, you be with what actually is. And it's very important when you said you understand that you have expectations. This is very important in our relationships too, that we have expectations. And the expectations that we have are most often, if not every single time, based in our perception of our own brokenness and what we lack and what we think the other person's going to fill that up with. And what you said was perfect. Daddy's girl. So dad filled that void before, and now partner, you have to fill that void. So it's important to know that we have these expectations in relationships, and we can start to rein it in a little bit and start taking more self-responsibility. But we can't take self-responsibility until we've looked in the mirror honestly. And we recognize that, yes, you bring so much wonderfulness to that relationship, so much power, so much beauty, so much creativity, but you also bring your baggage. You also bring your baggage. We all do. So you got to open up the bag and see what's in there. Otherwise, you're just lugging this thing around, So you open it up and you unpack it a little bit. And you're like, I haven't worn that in 15 years. Why do I still have it? Do you see what I'm saying? You haven't worn it in 15 years, donate it. Now, don't donate it to your partner. Donate it to the mother. She'll take it. Say, Ma, it's been a long time since I've needed this or wanted this, so I give it to you now, because you'll know what to do with it. And she will. She'll take it because you offered it to her. So you go up to Ma and you say, Ma, for a lot of my life I was daddy's girl, but I'm not a little girl anymore. I love my dad, but I'm not a little girl anymore. So can I give that concept, that preconceived idea of who I was to you, so that there's space for something else to manifest? And she'll say yes. Hand it over. But once you give it to her, you don't take it back. Don't take it back. You gave it to her. It was an offering. Now you're left with this amazing spaciousness that you need to recreate, to fill. What will you fill it with? We talked over the weekend about niches in nature. If I were to go out there and clear a little spot in that forest, just a little spot like the size of this little carpet up here, it wouldn't be long at all before Mother Nature went, whoop, mine, and put whatever she felt like putting there. That's why we're always out weeding the meditation path, because we, in all of our humanness, decided to put a meditation path right through the center of Mother Nature. And she's like, you think that belongs to you, but it's actually mine. So here's 10,000 seedlings. Here's some poison ivy. Here's whatever grows there. And so we go out and we meticulously take care of it. What will you put there? What will you plant there? So that you have at least a little bit more control. Nature's going to put what she wants there to some degree anyway. And karma's going to play out there. Karma says, yay, dance floor. Thank you for clearing out that space. Now I've really got room to move, And so mindfully, what you put there is what your intention is. And sometimes we have to take a little time to discover what that means, through counseling, through whatever process of self-discovery it is that you go through, whatever process of traumatic reconciliation it is that you yourself are going through. You make a decision what you're going to put there. And then if you find out that that's not working, that it's not exactly the right fit at this point in time, then you offer that to her also. You just keep offering it to her. Akhil Deshwari's greatest message to us is tear yourself apart. Don't be afraid to tear yourself apart. Tear yourself apart like Hanuman tore his chest open to show that in his heart there was only Ram and Sita. Now you tear yourself apart until you get to the very essential self, in which you find that all of this is child's play. It truly is. It's all child's play, but we're in the middle of the playground, and we are so attached to it. It's only if we are willing and brave enough to tear ourselves apart, then we can do the spiritual work of rebuilding. But don't get so attached to what you rebuild, because you're going to have to tear that apart too. It's just another layer of the onion. Wonderful insights. Anybody else? Savannah, yes.
How do we open ourselves up for more safe and compassionate conversations about our brokenness with like our friends and family?
You don't have those conversations with people who aren't safe. Period. So when you are looking for a safe person to speak with, you go to your family member. The first thing you need to do is read them, right? You need to look at them and be like, I wonder where they are in their moment. And don't make assumptions. So if you go in to say, your mom, and she's cooking dinner, and you're like, I really need to talk to you, and I really need to talk to you now. And she turns around to you and says, what is it? It doesn't mean that you can talk to her then. Nope. The next question is, I really need to have a sit down face to face about some very sensitive things that I'm feeling and going through. And you're cooking now, so it's not really the time, but can we schedule a time where we can be completely present to one another? And you go from there. If you catch somebody off guard, you don't know what you're catching. It's like anybody in here ever go fishing? You bait the hook because you think you're going to go fishing for bluefish. You toss it out into the water, and what do you reel back in? But, a jellyfish or a baby shark or, Jaws, whatever, something, a crab hanging on there. So you can cast the reel, but you don't really know what you're going to get. So you have to ask questions and set a little bit of an environment for what it is that you need. So you talk to them about that. And then if it is a person who you've attempted to speak with before, and they have not been conducive to the conversation, then there's a few things there. The first is, did you speak to them in isolation? Just you and them, where you made yourself extremely vulnerable. Perhaps invite a third party in who can be a mediator. Mediation programs really do work, and for good reason. So inviting a third person in who you're both agreeable to, so that you can sit down and talk, and that person can be a reflection for both of you. And maybe support both of you in holding a more equitable ground. As best you can, under no circumstances, put it all out on the table for someone who's violent to you, because they've already shown you that they have no concern. So why are you expecting them to change? It's not realistic. That is work that can be done under particular circumstances. Eye-opening epiphanies can be had, but it is under certain circumstances, and definitely not under ones where you're self-sabotaging. Yeah. So those would be the three things. I'll just kind of repeat them. The first is prepare the ground for the work that needs to be done in the conversation that needs to be had, and don't surprise people. Don't just give it to them on the spot. Mom's cooking a meal, say, right now is not the time, but I really would love some time to have with you to sit down with a face-to-face when we could be completely present to one another. The second is, if it's an individual who typically has a violent reaction on some level to what it is that you're saying, then invite the idea of a mediator. And number three, if it's an individual who is consistently violent in their response and reaction to you, then don't have that conversation unless you build the environment over a period of time in order to do so. And that would require a lot of professional support. Yeah. And it's okay also, and I know you have a thought, it's okay if you have things you need to say and the other person is not willing to listen. That's okay. You can't force other people to listen to you. And so there's a number 4 on this list. So because you can't force people to be the way that you want them to be the receptive agent that you wish for them to be, there's a thing called letter writing. Letter writing. Y'all know who have talked to me, I'm big on that. Letter writing is really big. You can sit down and say whatever you need to say, and you don't even have to filter. And you know why you don't have to filter? Because you don't have to mail it. Don't mail it if it's not filtered. Promise yourself that right now. Do not mail that letter if it is not filtered and reviewed and edited. Yeah?
Or email.
And don't email it either. Yeah. So you can sit down and you can just write this letter, and then you can burn it in a ceremony. Or you can hold on to it and go back and read it when you need to. You can use it for the foundation of a letter that you will eventually send. A well thought out letter that is truly a reflection of your deeper feelings, thoughts, and intentions rather than the reaction of your anger only. Yeah, so that's 4. What did you want to say?
I've just been reflecting through Yin in today's Wisdom Circle about how to accept the brokenness and how many ways that there are armors that come up around it. I've been reflecting through my healing on the anger I felt as a child, the justice seeking I continue to experience, the fear, the reality that I don't know what comes next if it's accepted, and how all of these things are just kind of a veil to hide the brokenness, to pretend that it's not there, and how difficult it is to move forward in acceptance of it.
Yeah. And accepting it doesn't mean fixing it.
No, just accepting it.
Just accepting
Knowing
it. Yeah. So the thing about that is, when we start looking at our brokenness, there's these different reactions that we have. And the first reaction is no. Period. First reaction is no. Nope. That doesn't work. That doesn't fit in. That's not what society wants. That's not what the billboard said. That's not what my parents want. That's not what my partner wants. That's not what my kids need. Nope. Nope. The second is maybe a little. Maybe a little. Tell me a little bit more about this idea. What exactly is it that you're talking about? And like any good child, 3 words in, and all you hear is wah, 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 wah. Because we're all children. Third stage. Tell me a little more. Then the conversation is a little bit longer. And you do listen to more than just the first 3 words. But there comes a saturation point where you can listen no more. And that's when the unhealthy ego, the aspect of the ego that is still very much attached to this concept of you got to be perfect, everybody has to like you, comes forward and says, this really isn't for you. I don't know who they're talking about, but they're not talking about you. You can't do stuff with this. This isn't useful for you. Shut down. Shut it down. And so you shut it down. Then the next level comes. And that's when you say, you acknowledge to yourself, I have a tendency to shut it down. I have a tendency to shut down that which I'm not comfortable with, and I'm not comfortable with my own brokenness. So I know that at some point I'm going to shut down, but I'm going to sit with it anyway. And I'm even going to sit with the shutdown, and I'm going to watch as the shutdown happens, as those boundaries and barriers occur. And I'm just going to breathe through it, because when the shutdown happens, it only means that they're going to open back up again at some point in time. And so I'll wait for that opportunity, and I'll continue to do that work. And then the next phase happens. And these phases aren't consecutive. They're messy. They happen all the time together, and it's different. And the next phase happens, and the next phase is, I had an epiphany. I accept my brokenness. Oh my God. This is like the most holistic experience of myself that I can ever have. This is amazing. And you want to tell everybody. And one person doesn't want to hear it. There goes all that work. I'm broken again. Because one person didn't want to hear it. It's like you're quashed, you know? Then the next part is we go out and we tell everybody how fixed we are. We're fixed. It's a bit of a delusion, you know, because we're just saying it so much to everybody as proof to ourselves of how fixed we are. And that won't last long either. Maybe a couple of lifetimes, you know. But ultimately, all of these different variants of our healing process, which is a process. See, the word is healing. I'm healing. It's an action word. It's a process. It's in process. It's not the finality of it. But at some point in time, every single one of us will come to the moment where there is complete reintegration. And brokenness will no longer be a factor. That's the self-awakening. That's the realization. And it is not going to happen in this lifetime. It's going to take 100,000 lifetimes. And along that trajectory, the thing that we each have to look forward to are the little epiphanies. The moments of peace. The moments where we say, you know, I really am perfectly okay with my brokenness. And I'm also perfectly okay with my goodness. And I'm perfectly okay with yours. And we have a little moment of peace there. Because no one feels threatened or judged or hated or separated or preferred or banished. But then eventually one person will say, aren't you mad at him? How can you be peaceful with that jerk? Or you're not enough. And it'll just set the ball in motion again. Because we're always accumulating karma. The blink of the eyes accumulates karma. Everything is karma. In the Tattva Bodha, it says, the wise person is the one who steps back and says and understands and knows this is all karma. And there's not a thing I need to do about it. Just be here and witness it. Because like any good boulder rolling down a hillside, it will eventually run out of energy. It'll eventually run itself out. Best if I don't get involved. Any other thoughts? I know our talks on Sunday mornings, and probably every other time too, can tend to be really heavy, you know, or complicated, or really it's just all simple. Love yourself. Love everybody else who's around you. If you can't love them, just don't hurt them. Don't hurt yourself. And if you find it difficult to breathe, then breathe deeper. And if you find it difficult to breathe deeper, then sit still. And if you find it difficult to sit still, then sit still anyway. You know, do the things that you know are good for you. And if you're in a moment where you need to cry, then freaking cry. Like, forget about the stoic bullshit. You don't need to be stoic. You don't need to be like, I feel nothing, I have to be strong, strong feels nothing. No. You were given tears for a reason. So cry them. You were given laughter for a reason, so laugh. You were given all of these things to help you to regulate appropriately. But when we stuff it, and in Ayurveda is very clear. It says, do not stuff anything. Do not hold in anything. Because when you hold it in, it creates disease. And disease is the foundational principle of disease. So cry if you have to cry. Laugh if you have to laugh. Fart if you have to fart. Pee if you have to pee. Poop if you have to poop. Eat if you have to eat. Drink water if you have to drink water. And I emphasize have to because otherwise food becomes an addiction for us. Do what you have to do, what you need to do, and do less of what is not needed. Any other thoughts or reflections? Carol?
On Friday, during our session, you mentioned forgiveness is the power of reclamation.
Reclamation, yeah.
And you said you'll tell us a little bit more about that.
Forgiveness. How do you come into this greater acceptance? It's only through forgiveness. Well, it's through two things. The first is forgiveness. The human aspect of ourself, the one that walks through the world, the one that deals with all these different people. Forgiveness is a key point in being able to accept ourselves and in being able to accept other people. Forgiveness is not saying that someone else's bad behavior is A-okay with me. That's not what it means. Forgiveness is the understanding that I recognize that when I'm hurting, when I'm in a state where I believe my brokenness is a fault of mine, like, a flaw, then I'm likely to do things that a healthy person wouldn't do. Like hurt myself and other people with my words and my actions. So at some point I have to forgive myself for the things I didn't know, for the realizations I hadn't yet had, for the mistakes that I made, for the harm that I committed. At some point, I have to forgive myself. Otherwise, that baggage thing that I'm lugging around with me has every mean thing I've ever done in it, has every insult I ever said in it, has every moment that I've ever said or done something to somebody or to me. It's in there and it's weighed it down. That thing weighs a ton. So without forgiveness, that is what I will be carrying. And as long as I am carrying that, there are things I can't do. Like truly accept myself. Those things, that's diametrically opposed to it. I accept myself completely. Well, except for that. And that, and that, and that, and everything else that's in that bag. So then you don't really accept yourself. Because you haven't opened the bag. And opening the bag entails looking, accepting what's in there, and then forgiving yourself for it. And what other people do that affects you is the same way. They're going through very similar things to what you're going through. And I know, personally, people do some pretty horrible things to other people. Some really horrible things. And we're not justifying those horrible actions. Forgiveness doesn't justify a horrible action. There is no justification for violence. But there can be forgiveness. And until the forgiveness happens, the doubt will always be there. The kind of brokenness that seems irreparable and painful and that takes your breath away will always be, the nightmare will always be there until the power of forgiveness comes. The power of forgiveness in those situations is not something that should be taken lightly and offered flagrantly. It's the power of forgiveness is something that must be sat with. And there needs to be a moment of readiness. You can't just forgive somebody. Say, I forgive you for whatever you did that was horrible to me. You can't just do that. It's something that will rise up within a person naturally. And it will rise up more when you are in the process of self-forgiveness. Your capacity to naturally forgive someone else will rise up more effectively, more truly, more naturally, the more you are able to forgive yourself. As long as you cannot forgive yourself, why the hell should you forgive anybody else? It makes no sense, does it? The more you can't forgive yourself, why should you forgive anybody else? If you yourself are not worthy of that. If that's the way you see yourself. Again, it's not a spiritual bypassing. We're not saying that everything is peachy keen and wonderful and that, people who are violent in their harm should be let off some kind of hook. That's not what we're saying. That is not part of this conversation. That's a much different conversation about repercussions and consequences and legalities and these types of things. But did you ever stop to think for even a moment that your forgiveness of yourself and then ultimately of all others who have ever been violent towards you in any way, shape at all, that your forgiveness is so very powerful, so very, very powerful, that it may actually be the changing factor in how you yourself step forward in your life and how another person steps forward in theirs. Because true forgiveness is not an open field of free-for-all. True forgiveness says, if I'm worthy of forgiveness, then I'm also worthy of boundaries. And I'm worthy to set those boundaries in a way that allows me to continue to build myself and allows me to say what I will and will not tolerate for what is within my control. And those boundaries are what our partners, our children, our friends, our family, our employers, our co-employees, what the world needs to have in place. You know, the old saying, you teach people how to treat you by the boundaries you set or fail to set, by the way you treat yourself, is 100% true. There is no fault there. It's absolutely true. So perhaps the power of your own self-forgiveness and then ultimately the forgiveness of others is that powerful that it will change your internal world and it will also change the immediate world around you because it sets a different mindset in play. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. And I really wish that it was easier. I so wish it was easier. I do. But it's not. And it won't be. And any easy answer is not your answer. Any easy answer, like, oh, just go do it. I can't stand when people say that. Just do it. It's a Nike ad, for Christ's sake, right? Isn't it a Nike ad? Oh, sorry, Christ. Yeah. Said that lovingly. You can't just do it. You haven't prepared yourself. You haven't set the foundation. You don't know what it is to jump off the cliff, so you won't jump off of it. Stand at the edge and look and be like, nope. You haven't investigated what that means. You haven't sat with it long enough. When you've sat with it long enough, you'll know, because then you'll be willing to take the next step. This lifetime, next lifetime. Don't be afraid of the baby steps, and don't be afraid of the big steps. Don't be afraid of the possibilities. Don't be afraid to imagine. You know, in Hinduism, there's this concept of the great imagination, and it's a powerful concept because it says, you imagined yourself into most of your life, you can imagine yourself out of it too. You imagined yourself into separation, so use that imagination to come to understand unity. You imagined yourself into your own lack of self-worth because you imagined what everybody else meant when they withheld from you. You imagined that it meant you weren't worth it. So now imagine that you are. And don't get caught in the ego trap. Don't imagine that you're worth it because of conceit. Imagine the truth of your worth. That it's what you're here for. You're here to have all these experiences, no matter how comfortable or uncomfortable. You're here to reconcile whatever karma can be reconciled, to forgive what can be forgiven, and to accept that it's just not time to forgive some things yet. But keep an open heart that someday it will be. You're here for self-study. And in that self-study, to find your way to her, to Ma, to that, to divinity. In some way, shape, or form, whatever you call it. We go up to the altar and we bow, we pranam, and we pray. And most of the time what we're praying is that, will you please put my pieces back together again? And Akhilandeshwari says, excuse me, have you seen me? There's nothing wrong with having pieces. All the pieces are unified naturally because they're part of the cosmic tapestry. So why are you so worried about them falling apart? They'll only come back together again, to fall apart again, to come back together again, to fall apart again. So tear yourself apart, rip yourself apart. Don't be afraid to let go of whatever it is that you think defines you, because there's a greater definition, one that doesn't need words. Tear yourself apart and leave nothing. This way you can discover everything. Let's sit tall and close the eyes. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om, followed by the All Beings mantra, the mantra of intention that all beings everywhere should be free of suffering, should be peaceful and happy, and that our thoughts, our words, and our actions can have something to do with that. Taking a breath in. Om.